first to the floor here.
First to the floor podcast. Shout out to Australia.
Jordan Crawford, nice move with the dribble.
Here's driving on Stoudemire, the jumper, yes!
What a diving save by the guard.
Yeah! Boston wins!
Tatum drives down and throws it down.
You guys are talking about a dynasty. Here's where it is, right here.
That's enough for the tie.
The best team in the world right now.
Marcus Smart at the buzzer.
Fireman in the deck.
All right, welcome in. First of the Floor podcast. Ben Vallis here, along with Jake Eisenberg. Thank you for joining us. Hope you're doing well. We've got a fun show for you guys tonight. Jake, how's it going, man?
Going good. We are entering the depths of the offseason. But, man, we've got however many months to ramp up this Celtics-Sixers rivalry. This season is going to be – it's like I'm going to struggle in this offseason more than – like any other, I think, recently because of how much change there's been across the NBA, how much significant change has been between the Celtics, obviously LeBron and Jalen. So I'm ready, and I'm like getting more bullish on the Celtics every day, it feels like. But for now, we wait, Ben.
We wait, and August is like, if you want to talk about doldrums of the offseason, because at least September we're looking at like preseason and there's like some ramp up to the season stuff going on. Yeah. August is truly a sad month in the life of an NBA fan, but it is also like a means to an end. It's sort of the final boss of the offseason, the month of August, and then we're sort of home free from there. Yeah, I've seen like a lot of people talking about with the excitement towards this season, like Jason Tatum's version of Jaylen Brown's season last year. But the more I think about it, the more I read stuff that, you guys have been writing on Celtics blog, for example, like it's not the same. So Tatum's team is a better team, not just because of the, actual presence of one Jason Tatum, but like Paul George, Jaylen Brown did not have a Paul George. Jaylen Brown did not have a Mitchell Robinson. But then, the Tatum of it all, it's like Neemias Queta, he's going to be back. And when Tatum came back last year, immediately there was like an aspect of Queta that Tatum unlocked with like the way that he can orchestrate the big man. So it's just very different. But also for all of those reasons, I'm like so excited for it because it should be in theory, really, and in practice, just like a far better season. That said, with the state of the East, I think like if we don't, start off with as good a record or halfway through the season, we don't have as good a record. People are going to start to panic. People are going to be, especially the Jalen stands, pointing fingers at Tatum, saying he's not a good. So there's a lot of narrative sort of juice coming into the season, like you said, Jake.
Yeah. Oh man, the juice is dripping. It's yeah, man. Like everyone on both sides. Like you've even got what seems to be Celtics fans considering jumping ship to a degree similar to like when Tom Brady left the Patriots. The difference is it's the Philadelphia 76ers and not the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a team in the opposite conference and a team that you've had basically nothing to do with. But yeah, this is exciting. That's my thing. I feel like I'm taking a little bit of crazy pills. It's like I understand the Eastern Conference is better. That seems to be like the argument that people are using for why the Celtics are worse. And I'm like, I get that they might win a few less games, but that doesn't make the Celtics worse. And that seems to be the thing that comes. It reminds me of the Jaylen Brown argument over Jason Tatum. The only thing that ever comes up on the timeline is Finals MVP. And I'm like, okay, well, Iguodala is better than Steph Curry. Turner Parker is better than Tim Duncan. Cedric Maxwell is better than Larry Bird. Jason Tatum in for Jaylen Brown. And if you're somewhat of a ball knower, you know that there's like a pretty comfortable gap between those two guys. So that's the simple one. You add Mitchell Robinson, which feels your biggest need. Again, I've just talked about how I almost didn't believe that last season we rolled out a backup big man group of Luka Garza, Amari Williams, Xavier Tillman, Josh Minot, and Chris Boucher. Like I almost didn't believe it, even though I went back and looked at it and experienced it myself. And then you add Paul George, who, even if he plays his 35 games, that's still 35 games of a dude that's very good that you didn't have before. And it's like the over and under on his games played, it's probably in like the high 40s. So if he gives you 45 to 50 games and Mitch Robinson gives you 45 to 50 games, the team is going to be really fucking good. And that's not to say that you don't get leaps from or improvements from all of the young guys. So I'm like, it seems very easy to me to paint a picture of this team being better than last year's team.
Yeah, and I feel like we also know like our identity going into this season. We're sort of back on track in that sense. Remember last year it was like, are we tanking? Aren't we tanking? Just like the direction going into the season was extremely divisive among the fan base. And we did this pod, 3 games into the season when we were down 0-3, talking about like what the upcoming draft class is looking like, and just like we're all on board the tank train, or on board the tank itself, I should say. And then things changed, and I feel like this year, like we know that it's the sort of the final year of the CBA salary tax repeater reset. We understand that this is a ramp up to next year where we can make more of a financial splash. We understand the optionality and the positioning heading into that season as well. Like I feel like there's more alignment, at least among, I don't know, people who are paying some attention as far as what the intent is about this season and going into the following season. Whereas last year, I feel like we were a little bit clueless, a little bit rudderless. Like we were coming off the Tatum Achilles, like we were just kind of completely lost in our emotions, coming down from the high of winning the title to suddenly like, fuck, what are we doing now? I feel like now we're sort of a little bit back on track as far as like what this season means and what the immediate future holds. So very excited. And just like Jason Tatum. I've been watching a lot of Tatum highlights, man. Excited to see that guy back on the court long term.
Yeah. I went back and looked at just some of his highlights from this season and posted it and had a look at his numbers again. And I'm like, the dude came back in under 11 months from an Achilles injury and was pretty much an all NBA player immediately. And Michael in the chat makes a good comment here. Some fans failing to kind of understand why the Celtics win in the formula. And we've been talking about it as the possession maxing formula, offensive rebounds, limiting turnovers. The shooting's obviously a part of it. And they've gone even more all in on that formula. So it's cool to know exactly what the Celtics are trying to do and how they're trying to win games. And now they've gone all in, and we know what to expect from the second the season starts. To your point, like we didn't know what to expect last season. We know season starts, we know what to expect coming in. And I think a lot of other teams don't know that about themselves. The Sixers are going to have a lot of stuff to figure out. The Raptors, even if they get Kawhi, will have things to figure out. So Celtics going to come in and be pretty good immediately. And if they're not, it's going to be really annoying. And it's going to be tough to defend because it'll be very loud at first, but I'm going to stick with the process.
Speaking of tough to defend, the premise for this podcast episode, ranking Brad Stevens' top mistakes, a premise that is tough to defend in that he, some might say, is perfect in every aspect of his existence, including that of president of basketball operations for the Boston Celtics. That said, we're entering peak off-season content slop mode, and we need stuff. And we've done a lot of pro Brad stuff, probably rightfully been accused of being, green teamers, green glasses, whatever, however you want to say it. Brad Stevens' truth is, and I'll put my hand up for that. But I think an interesting alternate lens on things is like Brad Stevens maybe not perfect, and talking about maybe the lack of identity going into last season and maybe some moves that have been made this offseason that should have been made sooner. We start to enter the category of Brad Stevens' imperfections and things that he could have done better. So, Jake, I know you've crunched the numbers, you've done the research, you have the data. I don't know how you want to do this, like ranking starting from 10 or 5 or 2, because he's maybe made a maximum of 2 mistakes. How do you want to roll with this?
Well, I think to frame it, and this was your idea actually, I think obviously it comes off the Jaylen Brown trade and how it's already being described as, by some, as the worst trade in Celtics history, as bad of a trade as the Luka Doncic trade. And we have been definitely one of the more, I can't say loud voices because it's only so loud the first of the floor voice can be, but definitely more positive voices and seeing the forest through the trees, so to speak. And I think what gives us a little bit of additional content. Yeah, apologies for using the word process in the chat. Apparently I said it a couple times. I understand that might be triggering. They don't own the growth mindset. Ironically, the Celtics have actually been a team that trusts the process in this last era, as opposed to the Sixers not trusting a good process. But alas, Shams Charania reported earlier in the week that going back to the deadline, hang on,
Well,
hold on.
what do we got here? Hang on,
Hold the
let's
phone.
find the. There we go.
There. What's up, boys? How
What's
we
going
doing?
on, man?
Boom.
To
I'm
what
here
do we owe
for
this
now.
privilege?
Wayne
We'll
Sweeney.
see. My son is not asleep. My wife's trying to get him to sleep. So there's a distinct possibility I'm on for about 15 minutes and then I'm back off. But for now, I'm here. Let's do this thing.
Fuck yeah. All right. I was just
That's awesome.
saying that the reason we're ranking Brad Stevens' worst offseason moves is because the Jaylen Brown trade has been described as the worst trade, which we will not know for a year, 2 years, 3 years. But to that point, Shams reported earlier this week that the Celtics were having conversations at the deadline in February with the Warriors about trading Jaylen Brown for potential picks, swaps, seconds. The package is kind of irrelevant. The part that is important and significant here is that Brad Stevens was ready to trade Jaylen Brown at the deadline in the middle of his career year. And everyone's looking for this secret reason for why. We've covered it endlessly. And at the end of the day, I don't think Brad Stevens thought what Jaylen Brown was doing was real or sustainable and thought that the Celtics' best way forward to winning a title was trading him. Spoony, take the floor.
Yeah, well, and I think that further evidence to the fact that he thought this team was a bit of a paper tiger and kind of fake is he brought up our record against other elite teams in his press conference when he was like, we were 3-11 against like the top 6 seeds in the NBA. So, yeah, man, like that. It's pretty crazy that Tatum's coming back. The team is playing really, really well. And he still sounds like had serious conversations at the trade deadline to trade Jaylen Brown. So Brad saw something, and I choose to trust Brad Stevens. Again, I was team. I think it's time to move on from the very start. So the Jaylen Brown trade will actually, an aspect of the Jaylen Brown trade will be appearing on my list. But the actual trade itself will not be.
Okay. Well,
yeah. It's interesting. Like we copped a lot of flack in the comments from opposing, I don't know, people who aren't fans of the show or whoever. We got a lot of engagement based on our stance, our objective stance on the Jaylen Brown trade. Then last show we did the Jaylen Brown appreciation show. No one watched it. What does that? Yeah. What does that tell you? What does that say? No one cared. Yeah, it was our least watched show in like months.
Yeah, very interesting. Well, let's get into it because I had a tremendous time going through the Brad Stevens transaction log because, wow, there's some weird stuff that happens in the NBA. And Brad Stevens came in at a really weird time. It was like the fans are back in the stands, but the COVID policy was kind of at its peak. I think from memory, this was the Kyrie Irving, I won't get vaccinated, so I won't play season, or I will be able to play, but only away games season. So if you remember, that was also the season that Al Horford apparently caught COVID like every second week and spread it to the rest of the team, which led to a string of 10-day contracts being Justin Jackson, CJ Miles, and it peaked with Joe Johnson. And then we came down to Al-Farouq Amino and Norv Pell. So those are not going to fall kind of in the remit here. The Bane thing is tough. And that was a Danny Ainge era from, if I'm correct, from Michael in the chat here.
That was the Pritchard draft, I believe. Yeah. Or the Neesmith. Wait, was the Neesmith the Pritchard draft? They the same year, right?
Yes. It was Neesmith, Pritchard, and Grant all in the same draft, was it? If I'm remembering that correctly, but the first move that Brad Stevens ever made was trading Kemba Walker and a 2021 first round pick for Alperen Şengün, which turned into Alperen Şengün for Al Horford. So he immediately fixed all the sins of the Al Horfordness of it all and brought back a dude that was the starting center and played 30 minutes a night en route to winning the 2024 championship. I'm just going to go with like the one move that I think you could argue was bad. And even then, it still can be defended. And I think it's the Drew Holiday extension.
Mm-hmm.
And Brad Stevens has basically told us that he believes that guys with 1 year left on their contract, guys in contract years that are significant parts of the teams, are bad for chemistry. He basically doesn't allow anyone to play a season as a free agent coming up. Drew Holiday, Jaylen Brown, like he is the extension GOAT. That's what Brad Stevens does. And so while I agree with the extension, it was at the time we were like, whoa, who are we competing against on the 3-year, 100 I'll find the exact details here, but it was a large contract extension that made it difficult to move once the CBA came for us.
Yeah, man. And look, I understand Brad's philosophy of never really having anybody on an expiring contract, but a big expiring contract is extremely valuable. And we had to do all this goofery with Drew to just basically continually trade down in contracts and give up assets to continually get less money. So you trade Drew Holiday, and that leads to having to get Anthony Simons. Then you find a taker for Simons to get under the tax, and that ends up with another trade that might be coming up here, the Vooch trade. So it just put us in sort of this multi-year, multi-step process in order to move on from Drew. Whereas if you just don't sign that extension, you could just let him walk. Or, it's like, hey, 2025 playoffs were not great, Drew. We still want you here, but it's going to have to be, 2 for 40 or something like that. But we were locked into that huge number. I think it was like 35 a year for 3 extra years on it. So I think
4-year, $135 million contract, $37 million player option.
So about 35 annual. I forgot it was 4, man. Holy shit. That's tough. And like Drew looked good last year. That's year 1. There's still 3 more years on that deal. So I think that is a very worthy number 1.
Yeah, but okay, so hang on. We'll keep going. We're going to hit PrizePicks, and then we'll talk about maybe why that is still defensible here. So you know what time it is. It's a scorching sports summer with PrizePicks, the preferred partner of the NBA. PrizePicks, look, you got WNBA, we got MLB, we got NFL coming soon. We got AJ Brown catching balls. We got Kyle Williams catching a ball, which was lovely to see. But yeah, the WNBA and baseball are heating up. We got big tennis slams, major golf tournaments on the horizon, and there's no better place for your summer sports picks than PrizePicks, America's #1 sports pick app. Download the app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, America's #1 sports app.
Spoonie, I know like 5 minutes ago you weren't even going to be on this show, but have you got any picks for us?
I do not really, but I can bring it up really quick. I'm sorry.
Right.
I'm totally unprepared. Also, Kyle Williams, is that the first ball he's ever caught? It's pretty close.
Hey, he caught like 3 touchdowns last year.
I know.
All sick.
Okay. All right. Here we go. We got Olivia Miles, more 21.5 points tonight, and B Stu, Brianna Stewart, less 17.5 field goals attempted. B Stu, she likes to get them up. She likes to shoot the rock, but 16 still a lot of shots in a WNBA game, which I believe are 40 minutes. So we're going to do that 20 to win 56. Boom. Done. PrizePicks.
Love it.
Shout out PrizePicks.
It's fun. Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
good little hoops viewing enhancer. We should also, speaking about enhanced viewing, the First of the Floor live show kicking off in Boston, probably first week of November, thereabouts. We're very much reliant on the NBA schedule at this point, hence venue and exact timing. Not locked in at this point, but there will be a First of the Floor live show in Boston. So whether you're in the Boston area or around the Boston area or thinking about making the trip to the Boston area for some Celtics games,
make the trip.
Come to the show. We'll be at multiple Celtics games, hanging out around town around that time as well. So we'd love to have you there. Some more information on the First of the Floor live show once that plan is locked in. But Jake, I'll throw back to you for the ranking of Brad Stevens' biggest mistakes.
I think the contract extension could have been smaller, or you obviously could have let him walk, but it did lead to a championship. They won the NBA title off the back of getting his contract. So whether or not you needed to do it, the entire goal of doing what we're doing right now is winning the NBA title. And Brad Stevens is like, we're maximizing everyone's friendship. Everyone's going to be rich beyond their wildest dreams. There's going to be no reason for anyone to be complaining about money. Now, Drew Holiday, is he like the one type of guy that's like probably not going to give a shit either way? Like he's just that type of guy. Brad's just not willing to play that game. Extend him. Everyone's happy. And yes, it led to the Anthony Simons trade. What's bullshit, I went back and looked. We got 2 second-round picks in that deal, and then we lost the picks because Drew failed a physical. And then Drew played really well for the Blazers and played really well in the playoffs for the Blazers. That's bullshit. We should have gotten those 2 second-round picks. And people are going to say, well, that led to the Vooch trade. So that's why this deal is bad. But that led to the Anthony Simons trade of player exception, which that's the magic of it all, right? We all want these TPEs. But I don't know, man. Like the goal was to go into the second apron, win the title, and then you had no choice but to get under the second aprons and get under the tax. So yes, in a vacuum, maybe the contract is bad, but he wouldn't have had to shed the contract with the same pressure if the CBA didn't change in this way. So I don't think maybe it is the worst move. But that's kind of the point of this whole thing is if that's the worst move, it hasn't cost us, didn't cost the Celtics any draft assets to make any of these moves. Yep. All it did was eventually lead to acquiring a big traded player exception.
Yeah, and Brad's always been a prolific extender, right? Like for the vibes, if nothing else, I'm sure that there's more that goes into it than just the vibes, but especially in this championship window, let's keep everyone happy, let's keep everyone paid and locked up long term, even if we can theoretically move them down the road, because we want the chemistry aspect of our potential championship team to be completely aligned and locked in. So, I know there was a KP extension and earlier a Marcus Smart extension where potentially, especially now with the emphasis on optionality, that maybe you wouldn't want to go down that road, but Brad's kind of always taken that leap just to keep everyone locked in and engaged, I think, Spoonie.
Yeah, and I think it ultimately, there's some guys that you want to have as an expiring contract, Vooch. Vooch is much more valuable on an expiring contract than he is on a 3-year deal as a trade asset because he doesn't have any trade value. But if you have good players like Drew Holiday, Sam Hauser, Peyton Pritchard, obviously those guys are on ridiculous deals, but it makes sense to lock in the asset. And then if you have to trade it further down the line, you're not in this situation where it's well, we're not going to trade for this guy because he's an unrestricted free agent next year or the year after. So, we said that offseason, I think Drew's going to have some positive value. I think he at least was neutral value on that contract. So even if it is a bad contract, it wasn't some Mozgov disaster, Evan Turner disaster deal, right? Alan Crabb, which I think all were in the same summer, but regardless, that was a crazy
Chandler Parsons.
Yeah, Chandler Parsons. Yeah. Oh, some brutal ones in that summer when the cap exploded. But so to that point is it a good contract? No, but it's not the fact that that's maybe the worst thing he's done. Although I've got a couple on here that I think are worse.
Go on. Give us one.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I think you need to review this trade in a vacuum. Trading for Malcolm Brogdon was a failure.
Oh, here we go. I knew this was coming as soon as Sweeney came on the pod.
I mean, look, okay. We eventually traded him for Drew. He had no positive value. He was just money. He was essentially dead money. And what we gave up in that was real assets, right? I mean, we gave up a 1st-round pick that ended up being Julian Strother, that, whatever. He's a rotation guy. He's not a good one. We gave up Aaron Nesmith.
There we go. There it is.
Matters. Nesmith would be awesome on this version of the Celtics. He's exactly the type of guy we need on the wing.
Athletic. Why Aaron Nesmith when I can have Jordan Walsh for a third of the price, though?
Nesmith shoots 45% from free on crazy volume, and he, and when I am very triggered. How dare you? And look, Brogdon did what always happens with Malcolm Brogdon. He looked great, and then he got hurt when you needed him most. And that, I mean, so I just think in a vacuum, like we gave up more value than we got back. And I'm not sure there's a real argument otherwise.
I think like I hear you. Like Neesmith would be so useful on this team, especially at the current price point. But like fast forward a couple of years, Brogdon and the Time Lord, a couple of picks get traded for Drew Holiday and thus a championship. And it's like it's difficult for me to sort of unpick that sequence of events based on the fact that it led to a championship. I hear there's probably other ways to get there, given like at that point in time, the moves were going to be made. The salary and the assets would have been there, and you probably could have orchestrated a similar trade. It's difficult for me to wind back like the specific elements that led to the championship, though. That's kind of where I struggle to see it as a failure. But anytime a guy like Aaron Neesmith, who I know Spoonie you've devoted a certain amount of your life to, anytime a trade results in the jettisoning of that player, like I can see your perspective.
So I was going to say this. Greeny in the chat beat me to it. He was really good in that Sixers series. And if he doesn't play well in that Sixers series, we lose in 6, maybe 5. And that means we don't get the Jason Tatum 50-point game in game 7. And we lose to the Sixers 3 years earlier than we did before. And we get one of like the most iconic moments in the Jays era. For that alone, it's probably worth it. And because it still led to the true trade. And I think because I do agree with you, like the winner of that trade, like just Brogdon for those pieces, I think Brad lost that trade. But again, he was really good in the season that he played, was important in rounds 1 and 2, and he led to the Drew trade because money-wise, it would have been a little bit more complicated without the Brogdon contract being a bit bigger. They probably could have still done it with some kind of extension or whatever. And I think this comes back to the broader point of the podcast is that even if there is something that isn't perfect, he's able to spin it in a way that doesn't really deplete the Celtics' current or future versions of themselves.
Yeah, this is really hard finding things Brad Stevens has done wrong, right? Like we're nitpicking essentially. So yeah, I just think like you probably could have just given Neesmith like, 17 million and got to Drew's salary in that. And maybe you don't have to include a pick because it's like, hey, we got this young, good wing instead of dead money Malcolm Brogdon. So
that would have been I get it. Like the worst contract in the league at that point, though, if you'd done that because he hadn't done anything yet.
Yeah, I know. That's the thing. It is kind of like it's butterfly, not what is it? Butterfly theory. Because like if Neesmith doesn't get traded, he probably doesn't become the guy who he is today. And we're saying like, hey, wish we traded him for Malcolm Brogdon, right?
Terrible move by Brad not trading Neesmith for Brogdon.
Exactly. Exactly.
I mean, it's tough walking through the like transaction record here, and you see stuff like where was it? Traded Romeo Langford and Josh Richardson and a first round draft pick for Derek White. Like amazing. That's just one of like so many just hits. Like if this was a band, like these like they just had hit after hit, album after album for like a decade essentially. Incredible record. I think Jake, you'd highlighted this in your notes in the Discord, I think, but September 15, 2021, traded Chris Dunn and Carson Edwards and a second round draft pick to the Grizzlies for Juancho Hernan-Gomez, which I think does Brad Stevens get his appearance in Adam Sandler's Hustle if he doesn't acquire Juancho Hernan-Gomez in that moment? It's probably one wrinkle to add to that trade. But yeah, I mean, Chris Dunn, he's had some pretty impactful minutes for the Clippers for a little while there, so he would have been a good guy to hang on to. Yeah,
I think that's another one in a vacuum where it's like, yeah, I think if they could have, but part of it is like he wasn't actually here, right? Like they had him during the offseason from memory, and then they flipped him, so he was like kind of a means to an end. And I'll be honest, I was kind of in on the Juancho experience for a little bit there. Yeah, obviously that was and I was actually someone posted the Carson Edwards Summer League highlights, and I was like, oh boy, Quadzilla. And I actually got worried about Chris Senak because I was like, Carson Edwards is kind of cooking, man. It wasn't just only the 3-point shot. He was getting downhill a little bit too. Obviously, I think that Chris Senak is better than the 5'7" Carson Edwards with big quads. But That Chris Dunn move, yeah, sure, in a vacuum. Again, we are clutching it at straws here, but Chris Dunn started in multiple playoff series, has been an elite perimeter defender, definitely leads into the philosophy. He kind of is like old Dylan Mitchell, I would say. Like if Dylan Mitchell becomes as good as modern day or like the last couple of seasons of Chris Dunn, that would be a pretty big win, I think, for Dylan Mitchell.
That would be an absolute home run, dude. Like Dunn is he's a little wonky in the playoffs because he can sort of shoot. He's like an Isaac Okoro type shooter where it's like people just let him shoot and sometimes they go in and it looks okay. But he can handle the ball a little bit and he's a ferocious on-ball defensive player and a good help. Like he's just an awesome elite defensive player. And Mitchell's like bigger and definitely has that in him. So I think it would be a home run at 45th pick or whoever Dylan Mitchell was to get Chris Dunn. Yeah. But yeah, I think like, look, on the Sinak thing, like Bruno Fernando dominating summer league is why I'm always just like very skeptical of bigs looking good in the summer league, but who is also in the trade. We got Chris Dunn in. So we got them both at the same time. Yeah.
I looked at Bruno highlights. There was some highlights from a few of these guys. Schmoody, do you have another one? I can go as well if you don't.
Why don't you go? Because Dunn was the next one I was going to say.
Okay. And this is the reason for the podcast, the reason for the last month of podcasting, writing, everyone's emotions across the world, the Jaylen Brown extension in 2023.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Did he have to give him the full Supermax?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. He just came off not a Supermax year, not a Supermax playoffs, but he qualified for All-NBA, and people can say the Celtics treat their players however they want, but we just talked about the Drew Holiday extension. Brad Stevens gave Jaylen Brown the richest contract in the history of the NBA when this contract was signed after a complete meltdown in the conference finals against Miami Heat after going down 0-3. And if he doesn't do that, maybe Jalen's still on the team.
What do you think, Spoonie? Because like at the time, I remember thinking we needed to give him the Supermax because, we just talked about how everything that's happened in the last few months has been dictated by current market value. And I feel like at the time, the Jaylen Brown Supermax was dictated by the same terms. If we wanted a chance to hold on to Jaylen and do so without him being disgruntled, we needed to throw the Supermax at him. At the time, I remember thinking it was as simple as that.
Yeah, I think Jaylen has made it very clear through his personality that he will be vocal when he feels disrespected. And I just think he absolutely would not have taken kindly to not getting the Supermax. And I think we probably would have been like, who cares, right? Like, just do it. Is the 5% of the cap really that big of a deal of a difference? But then you see like,
yes,
OKC,
in the end,
I know yes, it is a huge difference, especially when you're deep into the repeater tax. As my light turns off. And then you see the OKC guys who are taking like these elevators. Like I make third team, I get 27%, blah, 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 blah. I just think the vibes would have been completely submarined had he not given him that. But in hindsight, like and I think not even in hindsight at the time, I think we all knew it was an overpay, right? Like Jaylen should not have, he's not a Supermax guy. He never has been in his entire career. He's a max guy. But the people who are actually worth the Supermax is like 6 dudes. We happen to have one of them, but so I'm not sure Brad he had another choice, and it was to trade him that offseason, which obviously would have been a massive mistake because we won the title the next year. So, which actually kind of dovetails into one I have.
I was going to say on the Jaylen extension, I think it can't be a bad move because the next season you got the best season of Jaylen Brown's career, and we can quibble about the Eastern Conference and Finals MVPs, but it was the best season of his career. He bought into his role fully, as did the rest of the team. And it's like if Jaylen is willing to buy into his role, and Tatum and Horford and Drew. And part of the reason is that Brad Stevens is taking care of these guys from a contract perspective, then I don't really care. You won the title. And then again, yes, people are mad about the return of the Jaylen Brown trade. It was an overpay. You get 2 premium draft assets. Paul George, who I'm starting to think is gonna just be awesome, and
Another
make
team
sure
podcast.
make sure you start injecting that BPC 157 now before the drug tests start, and send me some while you're at it. And
Buy it off Instagram, bro.
yeah, I'm not buying that. I want the NBA one.
Yeah, dude, the gas.
I don't want the ones that say not for animal, only for animal purposes, not for human consumption.
Yeah.
I want the ones for NBA players, please. Yeah. So you again, like the Drew trade, you spin it into not hurting yourself asset wise. You spin Jaylen Brown into not hurting yourself asset wise. And you actually put yourself in a position now where your war chest of assets is so flush between draft picks, swaps, and young players. And again, you won the title in a dominant fashion. Dominant fashion. I saw a picture of the NBA standings today from that season again. We were 14 games clear of the Knicks at the 2 seed. 14. 14 fucking games is at like a fifth of the season. What are we? It's crazy.
We lost 3 games in the playoffs, which is unfortunate that the Knicks also just did that. But
no, really annoying.
Yeah, it is really annoying. But so one of mine is that if you're gonna trade Jaylen Brown, we should have traded him last offseason.
Yeah.
And again, hindsight 2020, but clearly Brad, if he's shopping him at the trade deadline, this season could not have gone better.
Maybe he did.
Or keep Jaylen Brown, right? You have to trade him last offseason, even if you get lesser value than what you got this offseason, simply because it immediately turns our draft pick into a premium asset. It gets us right to the top of the lottery, and this was a fucking phenomenal draft. Look at the top 4 picks. They're all
we weren't getting that high though. We weren't getting
I know,
that high.
but you just need to be in the mix to win that pick, though. You know, like you just need lottery odds, man. And then even like this draft is loaded with good players, dude. So I think that to me is one of Brad's biggest mistakes is that he should have pulled the trigger last offseason in that case.
My only pushback would be he just had meniscus surgery in the right knee. So I wonder, could they have gotten more? Or your point is that it actually doesn't matter because you turned your own pick into something that good. I don't know. They were just so fucking good with Jaylen off the court last season. I'm like plus 14. Would they have been able to get into the lottery? Like the East was so bad and the league was much worse last year. Would they have just maybe ended up like maybe you're the 12th best odds, the 13th best odds? But is that not a failure as well? To like just organizationally structure yourself to actually tank. But now I don't know. It seems to have worked out real great, and I feel great about our position right now. And we've in last season by being competitive, you've developed Ugo. You've built this culture of winning around all these young guys and being psychopaths. Like, is that more valuable than maybe getting the Mikal Brown Jr. pick? Was that his name? Mikal Brown? Why am I adding a junior to his name?
He was this year.
Yeah. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
Like,
Mikal Brown, dude, Mikal Brown would be filthy.
I know. But is that more valuable than the structural development stuff you got across the roster?
I'm not sure that's answerable. The flip side is like, but also maybe Ugo gets 10 pick and rolls a night in his rookie year, and is like, is that more valuable?
Yeah,
again, unanswerable. Yeah.
I want to know what that one looks like too.
Yeah. I think like this mistake, if you want to call it that, like the absence of doing something is kind of the impetus for the premise of this show, right? Like I think that's kind of what everyone in hindsight, now that all the dust has settled on the Jaylen thing, like that's kind of what we're thinking. Like if you were going to do it, why didn't you do it earlier? I've heard the argument that the optics for Bill Chisholm as a new owner at that juncture could have been a factor in not making that move, because it would have looked like he came in as an owner and is immediately like shedding assets, shedding salary, trading Jaylen Brown. That could have been a factor as well. I don't know. But certainly in hindsight, you could have positioned yourself along the same lines with all this optionality, but just slightly earlier with more of a runway to the Tatum return, with better draft capital, like you said, Spoonie. That seems to be like the mistake, I guess. But we'll see how it plays out. There are, looking through this transaction list as we begin to wrap up here, like quite a few micro errors, I think. Again, only through the benefit of hindsight. Also, there's like a huge list of names where I remember like fully being bought in on like, this is that guy, Broderick Thomas being one of them, like
Noah
big dimensions
Vonleh?
guy. I was just like, yeah, good, great, sizable wing. Like he's got a lot of upside. Fiondu Kabengele, I know was like a huge meme back in the day on this show, Spooty. There's quite a few there. We acquired Bol for a little while there. I think in today's player development scenario, imagine Bol filtered through what we have now. I'm kidding.
Justin
of course.
Jackson, I was into. So actually, I had a similar experience, Ben, and especially when you go back early, it's like one of the funniest things about the beginning of Brad's tenure is that his first draft pick is Johan Begaron at pick 45, and guess who is picked one spot after him? Delano Banton. And if Brad was on this show right now, would he answer that the biggest mistake of his career was not picking Banton there? Because ever since that moment, he has been trying every possible way to get Delano Banton onto this roster for whenever he has a chance. He brings him in, he sends him out. He brings him in, he sends him out. And I saw it in person. He just came back at the back end of last season when we're like signing these little contracts to make sure we stand at the tax. And Brad comes over to Banton after kind of flying in that day or the yesterday, and they hug as if a father and son have been reunited once more after Odysseus returns from Calypso's island. And I'm like, maybe that's the moment. But I also, you go through that kind of list early days. It took Brad a little bit to find the Midas touch, whether it was the Chris Dunn trade, whether it was the Broderick Thomas. To be fair, the Luke Cornett signing is sprinkled amongst the early days here. Like the nailing of every fringe move that has happened in the past 18 months, and not everyone, right? Chris Boucher didn't nail it, but like, yes, Xavier Tillman's knees turned to dust, but it was good for when we needed him. Gaza, why not? You name it. But like, it took him a little while to figure out that stuff, like the Jabari Parkers, the Begaron picks, like Matt Ryan. Again, it's the end of the roster.
Harrison Matthews, he was a guy.
Yes.
I liked him.
Absolutely.
I see him. I plugged all of the moves into Claude last night just to have my own argument with him, and he pointed to the Danilo Gallinari move, and I was like, "But if he doesn't tear his ACL, then that's like a good move, and then also leads to the Porzingis trade, which leads to the title again. So it's like, and again, it's like a mid-level signing. So how bad are these moves actually? This is the only move of consequence that might come back to bite us.
I tried plugging all this into Claude early this morning as well, just because I had such limited preparation time, and the arguments that it gave me in terms of like actual Brad Stevens mistakes that it proposed, I was like, I reject all of these. These are not these are not mistakes. Like, you're wrong, Claude. And at the bottom it was like, hand up. Like, honestly, I think Brad Stevens is like quite perfect and has very few mistakes. So it's an interesting premise for a show, but like, good luck was the summary from Claude. Which I thought was interesting. It did. I think one of the things it listed was the timing of the Grant Williams trade, and I was like, no, like that was perfectly timed. What are you talking about?
That was on my list. Maybe like, could they have gotten more for Grant Williams? Like, they got a couple of seconds for Grant, but then obviously he's torn his ACL since then. But I think again, it's a microcosm of the Jalen thing. Like, to some factions of there was a big faction of the fan base that like really loved Grant, and the Celtics media was very high on Grant, and it was like, actually, he was just blocking the way for Sam Hauser to come in and be much better than him. And despite him having that game 7 and having a couple of nice defensive series, Brad was like, I actually don't see it. And that
he kept
continues
dressing
to
up
be
like Batman at a press conference. Like, he signed his trade certificate in that moment.
That's like almost too a similar analogy to the Step Brothers scene where they're wearing the tuxedos in the job interview, and Seth Rogen was interviewing them, was like, oh, this is kind of cool, and then they fart in the interview, and they're like, actually, the tuxedos seem fucked up. In hindsight, the Batman costume is fucking insane.
It's a little cringe. Moses Brown.
Moses Brown.
I said a little cringe. Yeah, a lot more than that. Yeah. Dude, no, there's one we're missing. Massive mistake. I hated the trade at the time. Maybe you guys already talked about it since it's that big of a deal. We traded the pick that became Adem Bona for Jaden Bumass Springer.
Yeah.
Dude, Bona is good. He is a backup center in the NBA, second round pick, solid pick.
Yep.
For Jaden Springer, who never had a chance. And like it was his like 4th year in the league. It was over. Sorry to cut you off, Ben. Go ahead.
Sam LaFrance is punching rocks right now, kicking rocks as well. And then Sam would probably argue that dumping Jaden Springer should be number 1 in the power rankings of this.
Yeah. No, that's a really good one, Spoonie. I didn't have that. But just in the realm of like names that jumped out in the moment, Moses Brown that we got back in the Kemba for Horford trade. I remember thinking Brad's cooking here because Moses Brown had like his one good game ever against the Celtics.
Yeah.
But then Moses Brown was traded for Josh Richardson, who had a good, half year for the Celtics. And then of course was like one of the main pieces in the Derek White trade. So Brad was cooking, it seems. Just took a little while for that to unfold. So it's an interesting exercise, I think, to go through the Basketball Reference Brad Stevens transaction list because there's some blasts from the past. There's some things that will evoke some feelings in you that you had probably long forgotten about. And it's just an interesting walk down memory lane. Anything else, guys?
Yeah, man. Every move of consequence has led to really good things for the Boston Celtics. So starting with the Horford trade, coming to the Drew Holiday trade, the Porzingis for Marcus Smart trade, which like you can almost look at it and it's like, has Marcus Smart come out the end of this trade actually better than Porzingis at this point? But did that need to happen in order to, one, keep Al Horford fresh in the regular season and make us a juggernaut through that stretch? Probably. And to shift the vibes, clear the way for Derek White to become Derek White as well, and allow Drew Holiday and Derek to be this fearsome tandem, and also kind of clearing the way for Pritchard at the same time.
And we got 2 picks. We got 2 firsts.
Yeah. Obviously, the Derek White trade will go down in infamy forever. So like the Baylor Shireman pick, like there's like the
Derek White right into Baylor Shireman, the biggest moves of Brad's tenure.
Did we see the picture of Baylor on Instagram today? He is looking fucking svelte, dude.
Oh, really?
Check this
out.
Gracious. Yeah, Dimensions Watch. Goodness gracious.
I know what I'm doing later.
But hey, 30th pick, and he comes in, and now he's playing 20 plus minutes a game, being a good rotation guy. Ugo looks good. Like, the list of good things that have happened is becoming incredibly long, and the big moves that have happened have all, at worst, been neutral and then been able to be spun into really good. So for that reason, like I was listening to Simmons and his dad on the pod, and they're like, and Simmons is so close to figuring it out. He's like, I don't know, maybe Brad Stevens just knows some stuff. And I'm like, yes,
no shit.
Just go down, just put your brain inside Brad Stevens' brain and try and figure out from his perspective why he's doing anything, and the vision will become clear to you.
Like in life, it's a good way to conduct yourself. Just try and think like Brad Stevens. We should all do more of that. Just going through the list. I'm not going to read them all, but there's so many good ones. Colby Jones to the Kings for Jordan Walsh and another second-round pick, which ended up being Anton Watson, who we were all extremely high on at the time. I think out of the league now, unfortunately.
Yes, indeed.
That's tough. Look, Brad hasn't nailed the 40s and the 50s yet. That's like his last kind of
tough.
Kind of hurrah. If he can, Amari Williams, I'm sorry to the truthers. Maybe he'll be the first one in the 40s to pop.
Maybe. All right, let's leave it there. That's going to do it for this one. First of the Floor live show. Make sure you subscribe to this channel, to all of us on Twitter. All of our socials are in the comments and everything, because that's where you're going to get all the details on the upcoming First of the Floor live show in Boston in November later this year, pending NBA schedule. Sign up to the Patreon as well. I'm going to be on Patreon, I think solo, a little bit later tonight, talking about like role adjustments and the most sizable role adjustments in the upcoming year for the Celtics. In the meantime, Jake Spoonie, love your work, guys. Until next time, go Celts.